Welcome my friends to another Alliteration Gaming video. I'm Levi, and today I've got a super special deck profile for you guys. I have the highly anticipated All Might 2 deck profile coming at you hot off the charts. Literally, he is on the fire symbol. The Texas heat, the summer heat is hitting us all hard right now. It's blistering over here. And so on that occasion, I'm bringing you this very, very fun hot girl summer fire All Might deck profile. So I've been working on this guy for, I think maybe our first stream where we worked on him was like a few weeks ago, and this guy went through so many iterations, so many different different card counts, so many different deck sizes, so many different tech choices, and just so much learning has happened with this character and this deck as a whole. Since we first started working on it, and today I'm bringing you what I kind of feel is the more or less finalized product. Anything else is like really minor tweaks that you can make here and there, but I feel comfortable enough where he's at to give you guys a deck profile of him. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. We're going to go ahead and start with the character card himself. This is All Might 2. He's a 6-hander with 29 health. He's got all fire and good. We're playing him under fire today, and he's got two very cool abilities. His first enhance lets you discard the top 4 cards of your deck to give your attack plus 2 damage. Then if it's blocked, the next attack also gets plus 2 damage. And then in the second enhance, you can discard a momentum to draw a card, and then if this attack is not blocked, you draw another card. So the first enhance obviously only works for your attacks because it's a damage pump, but the card draw works for either player's attack. So whether you're attacking them and they take your hits, you draw 2, or you're taking their hits and you can draw 2. So this character is like super duper interesting, right? Because he's got a lot going on, right? He's got a lot of pressure. He's got 3 damage pump like crazy, and then he draws cards out the wazoo. And so the reason we're mostly playing him under fire is the way he interacts with a lot of the fire attacks. He kind of puts your opponent in like these really ultimatum type situations where they're damned if they do and damned if they don't, whether they block it or take it. The consequences of both sides just start racking up really high, and that's what really inspired me to make him under the fire symbol. And that's kind of the whole theme of the deck as you're going to see going forward. And then the drawing cards is really just kind of what helps us survive and also output more pressure when we need to find a bunch of attacks for our kill turns. But for most part, the second half of the character is what lets us be able to survive so much. Essentially, like once we start swinging at them, we're essentially a 7-8 hander depending on the circumstances, and we have a little bit of card draw as well under fire. So this deck finds a lot of cards, and you're going to see that reflected in a lot of the card choices. So let's just start going through the attacks, right? That's kind of the most important part, right? So for the attacks, we start off with 4 copies of Corrosion Lunge. Yeah, spoiler alert, this is a very Fury-based deck profile. This is the fire symbol, Fury build of All Might. You can also go for like a kind of ranged build under fire with like the Todoroki attacks and the Frigid Heatwave and all, but I chose to go into the Fury route because, again, it interacts, I think, really well with our character. So Corrosion Lunge is a 3 low for 5 that has an enhance that says if it's blocked, your next attack gets 2 speed and 2 damage. And then it also has a deadlock enhance that if it's completely blocked, it still deals 3 damage, which is pretty cool. But for the most part, this top effect, this is what's really scary. So this is immediately where the ultimatums start within this deck, because you open with this, you give it 2 damage with All Might, and you say this is a 3 low for 7. And then if you block it, the next one's going to have plus 2 speed and plus 4 damage because All Might also stacks the damage. And then we're going to use the All Might enhance on that one as well, so it's really going to have 6 damage in total. So immediately, the annoying ultimatums start in the sense that, hey, you don't want to take 7, but if you block this one, you better be able to block the next one because it's going to have plus 6 damage in total on it, and it can even get worse from there. So this is a really annoying card. They don't want to block this, but like they also don't want to take 7 because that's such a big number. So again, starts putting them in really bad positions, and you'll see kind of how it interacts even further with other cards in the deck once we get to them. So next, this is kind of our main our main kind of like fire starter, if you will. This is just kind of like our big attack. This is Turn to Dust. This is a 4 high for 5 with EX2 and Stun 2, and it has some really annoying enhances. So the first enhance says we can destroy one of our own foundations to destroy a foundation that we stun from this ability, or your opponent can lose 2 health to cancel this ability. And the second enhance is the same thing but inverted. You lose 2 health to make your rival lose 2 health, or they can destroy any foundation to cancel this ability. So honestly, the biggest part about why I play this card is the Stun 2, because Stun 2 is essentially speed, right? And what this deck lacks is speed. It needs its speed pump because we have so much damage pump on our face with All Might. We really just want to find speed pump. So it being a Stun 2 attack is like the real juice there, but also just these again, we put our opponent, it's the whole theme of the deck, right? We put our opponent in these ultimatums where it's like they can definitely pick which of the 2 they want, to do. Like collectively, this card is, hey, if I use both abilities, it is 2 instances of destroy a foundation or lose 2, and they get to pick, granted, but you also get to pick which ones you want, right? So it's really just kind of like a game state progression card, if that makes sense. But it lets you do it as the aggressor, so it's really good in that sense. And like, you don't know if you can always use these enhances. Sometimes you just throw this down and stun 2, EX2, make it fast. Like, again, it's going to be a 4 high for 7, so like it's really scary to come in after this, right? Because if they block this, then this comes in, it's so big and it's so scary, and it's just like, oh my god, well now I just gotta take like, what, 11 damage, because I can't block this, like, I already blocked this 3 low, I can't block this 6 high. It's really, it's a ton of pressure from your end. And then to round out our 5 diffs, we play 2 copies of Long Lasting Explosion. This card kind of went in and out of the deck for a while, just really because I was trying to accommodate for block zones, but this card is really good. It's not a 4 of, it's only a 2 of, because it kind of like, sometimes if we see it too early, it can force us into really bad chains, and we don't always want that, especially super early on when we're not trying to go like a 5 diff and then a 5 diff, right? Like on our turn 1, if we only built 3 or 4, that's just asking to check really well or really get screwed on the backswing. So this is kind of like a really badass card though. So it's a 5 mid for 6. 5 mid is already really attractive because we have damage pump and not speed in our deck. But the enhance says if the next attack you play is a high, it gets 3 speed, or if it's a mid, it gets 3 damage. So really the most attractive thing here is like this, and again to go into Turn to Dust. The Turn to Dust comes in as a 7 high for 7 with our character. If they blocked it, if they blocked Turn to Dust, this is going to be a 7 high, or I'm sorry, if they blocked Long Lasting, this comes in as a 7 high for 9, and they probably want to block Long Lasting because they don't want to take 8 damage because of our character, right? +2 on everything. They don't want to take 8 damage, but also if they go and block a 5 mid, if they're blocking that without a plus ultra, it's going to be really hard to stop this Turn to Dust coming in for, you know, even more damage, right? It's just really scary. It's hard to know what to do in those types of situations. Again, only 2 because it's not really a card you want to see all the time, but like if you can just like start your kill turns with this card, it's really good. Like Corrosion Lunge into Long Lasting into Turn to Dust, like kills people really hardcore. And then we have, for our 4 diffs, well, our four or less diffs, I should say, we have 4 copies of Signature Right Swing. This is just a really nice card to help us aid in like the flow of our kill turns. It's just a 3 high for 4, but it says enhance, discard 2 cards, draw 2 cards. Again, just a really handy attack in that sense. It helps us, you know, when we have so much draw power, so just having the nice filtering is really good. It's also got a great block zone. I will tell you something about this deck right now before we go further into it. The block zones on Fire are bad. The modifiers are not great, but the zones are really bad. I think the overall block spread in this deck is not great. It is 18 highs, 35 mids, and 20 lows, which is not the greatest spread in the world, so a lot of card choices do get dictated by block zone. I'll tell you that right now. So 1 low is extremely attractive block zone right there. But in general, yeah, it's just a great card. It just helps us get there. It just helps us find our kill turns. Another really amazing card in our deck is 4 copies of Touch of Decay. This card's crazy, man. So this card basically is it's a 4 mid for 4, which is not a great stat spread, but it's got stun 1 and it has a combo enhance to commit a foundation. If it's completely blocked, you get to add it back to your hand after it resolves, and then and it also has an enhance that if it's not blocked, you draw a card. So this is really like the super ultimatum card, right? You come in, because like the solution basically for this card, right, is I'll just half block it, so you don't get either of these effects. You don't get to pick it back up, but I block, so you don't get to draw a card, so you half block it. But you can damage pump it, especially with Long Lasting, so the half block is even scarier, and the half block is still really good in our deck because then it just gets to go to momentum and converts into card draw. So it's just a really nice flow card in that sense. And then if you get them to a point where they can't block it, and you can use the All Might momentum on it, you get to hit them and draw 2 cards, which is really crazy. In general, it's just a really powerful card. If you get to like a late game point where you don't have like a lot of attacks per se, but you have enough foundations to just keep playing this, and it basically, if you can make the half block on this lethal, like once they get to like 5 or less or something like that, depending on how big you can make it, if you can make the half block on this lethal, like without any other damage pump, it's just 6. So if you get them to 3, they basically have to block this as many times as you can commit to play it, because they can't half block it. And you just get to keep picking it back up. It's going to be stunning 1 every time. It's just a really nice attack. And then, last but not least of our attacks, or actually not last and not least, 4 copies of Instant Explosive Release. This is a 3 high for 3 with some really sick enhances. So the first enhance is add it to the momentum after it resolves, only playable if your first attack this turn dealt damage. The second enhance is if it deals damage, your next attack gets 2 damage. So this interacts really well with our character and our kit, because basically Corrosion Lunge and then having this in hand is like the ultimate like, oh, what do I do for your opponent, right? Because I can, if I block this, the next one's going to be so big, so I'll just you know, grit my teeth and take my 7. Then you just send this in, it gets to go to momentum right after. You send the next attack in, you instantly start drawing cards with All Might, and they're just like, oh my god, where did I go wrong? And even if you don't have it, they still have to always think about it. Like if they see it in your deck, they have to always be thinking about the presence of the card. So even when you don't have it, it's still doing work. It's still a really strong card. If you'll notice, we mostly have a lot of highs. The only mid that interacts with long lasting is Touch of Decay, which is fine because you always want to put damage on Touch of Decay because you want it to be more punishing on the half block. And then the others, you just want them all to get speed. Like again, like you play long lasting into this, this, or this, they all get speed. So it's really nice. You want your attack to just be super fast. Because All Might's just going to put out all the damage for you already. So this card's really good. I don't think you have to play it at 4, but I do like playing it at 4 because I always like having it. I never like when my opponent like calls the bluff, basically takes it and takes the first one, whatever it is, and then I don't have it. That just always sucks. But the thing is, like, even if the first effect isn't online, it's still a good attack because if it deals damage, the next one gets +2. So with All Might, the next one gets +2 no matter what, if it blocks or if it deals damage. And if they're in a position where they feel like they have to half block it, the next one gets 4 damage, which is crazy, man. Really. So I think, you know, it's a really good card, and it's just a 3-diff attack. Like, it could be a 3-diff with only this ability, and I think I'd still like 2x it probably, just because I value that ability a lot. I think it's really gnarly. And then now, last but certainly not least of the attacks, is 2 copies of Ice Storm. So Ice Storm is a really cool. It's not a Fury. It is our only non-Fury in this deck. However, it has Breaker 2 and Powerful 3, and it cannot be blocked by attack cards. And it's a 4 low for 4. So like it doesn't really interact super well with our kit too much. It's really just there for the Breaker 2, if I'm being honest. I kind of just treat this as like an action card with Breaker 2, but sometimes if I just need it to just like, if I just need that last attack to kill them, it can get in there. You don't really get to Powerful that much because you're usually spending your momentum a lot in this deck to either draw cards or EX turn to dust. But if you're not, like, it is still, like, again, it's just Ice Storm, right? It's always just an option to just, like, nuke them if you need, right? It's just always that really handy option if you need. And that is the attacks. It's a lot of attacks. It is 24 in our 73 card deck, which is almost exactly a third. Yeah, the deck is 73 cards, so this is like more or less enough attacks, especially with all your draw power. You should see your kill turns pretty consistently. I'd like to play more cards in this deck, but there's a lot of foundations that are really important to you surviving in this deck, so that is what ultimately drove the decision to not have like an 80 card deck or something like that. So let's get on to those super important Actually, before we get on the super important foundations, let's just go over the actions, because I feel like the actions are super duper important in this deck. For the actions, we have 4 copies of Evil Gaze. This card is freaking cracked, man. It's a 1 mid with Breaker 1. It's a 0-diff action that has an enhance to lose 2 health, to give your attack 2 speed, or -2 speed, so you do it on yours or theirs. And then if the attack is blocked, you get to destroy one of their foundations. You get to pick what you destroy, and then you remove this card from the game. It also just has a deadlock to just destroy anything you want right then and there, which is really nice. But yeah, this card's insane. We have a lot of health to sift through as far as like health costs, so I never mind paying 2 health, and it's just insane. Just getting to just destroy whatever you want, and like being able to pump the speed on your attacks on your kill turns is really nice, because again, the speed is what we need. Or just making it just really easy. Like you can like Evil Gaze into the Breaker 2 Ice Storm block is just insane. That's so punishing to so many aggro decks and completely messes up their the math they probably did for their kill turn. And if they're at a point of no return, it can be very punishing. So Evil Gaze is an insane card in this deck. And then we play 3 copies of Capture Evildoers. The 4th is definitely in the side. This card's insane as well. These actions are really crazy, guys. It's another 1 mid with Breaker 1 with an enhance to remove a rival momentum. You get to pick, and if you do, you get to add the top card of the deck to your momentum, and then remove this card from the game. It also has a form to discard a momentum to discard up to 3 cards in your card pool. So that, like, if you don't have a lot of foundations to commit and you have a billion attacks in your hand, that form can really help you just like kill them right then and there. But for the most part, we use this card for this top enhance to get rid of their momentum, which is really good against like almost every relevant meta deck right now. Every air deck, right? Like every air deck wants their momentum. Being able to like keep characters like Jiro and Ochako off of their momentum is very powerful. And then like you get the momentum yourself, which then converts into a draw 1 or draw 2 with our face. So it's literally like it's a complete wash, but you get to sap their momentum. It's just amazing. It's an amazing exchange in general, but also in our character, it's very good. That's kind of really the beautiful thing about this character is you can run all these actions like super duper freely. You kind of just don't really have to care. You can run them super freely because your character already supports such a huge deck size, and then this card interacts so well with our character because it actually doesn't take up like a slot in our hand basically, right? Because it replaces itself. Alright, let's move on to the foundations. So first we have what I jokingly call the best card in the deck, but low-key might be the best card in the deck. We have 4 copies of In the Typhoon. This is a 3 diff foundation. It's got a nice 1 mid block. Yeah, our mid blocks in this deck are insane. Never swing mid at me, bro, because like it's gonna be good for me. So this card has an enhance to remove itself and discard 2 cards from your hand. This attack is considered completely blocked during the block step. This is a really crazy card. So this card took at first I was siding this card just because it seems like a good sideboard card. Then the more I realized, yo, I have a billion cards in hand all the time and my block zones suck. 4 copies of this card is just how I survive. 4 copies of this card is how you make up for Fire's bad block zones and modifiers. And yeah, I started with 2, and then I immediately realized like, whoa man, this card is nuts, and I just wanted more and more of it in my deck. Now it's just, this is like what I mulligan for practically every game. This card's really important in helping us survive, and you're gonna kind of see what I mean from here on out when I say a lot of these foundations are really important to our game plan. So you really want to see them, which is what's facilitating the smaller deck size. There's cards I would like to be running in the deck to go to like maybe 80 or 85. Like, I don't mind that size as a principle, but it's a matter of there's like a lot of cards in this kit that I need to be seen for my good turns. So that's kind of what's facilitating a 73 card deck size. Next we have 4 copies of SelfAssured. This is again basically the same principle as in the Typhoon. This card says it can commit itself to change the zone of an attack. You can also destroy to draw for every 4 range, but that doesn't happen in our deck. We don't play ranged attacks for the most part. But yes, commit change zone of an attack. We basically just want to make everything mid because like all we have is mid blocks in our deck, and our only good blocks are the mid blocks. So cards at a 4x, it is a unique. It's like not great when you see multiples of them, but you have this and Leighton Skill to discard cards and draw cards. You filter out the extra copies pretty easily, and if you have to block with it, like it's not a great block, but it's not the end of the world. It really doesn't get much better than 3 high in this deck. Like our 2 high is an attack, which like we don't want to block with. So yeah, I don't really like running 4 of this card because again, it is a unique, it can be a little cloggy, and it's a 4-check, but the more I played this deck, the more I realized it was just kind of a necessary evil to survive under the fire symbols, subpar block zones, and what you have to be playing in this deck alongside that. So next we have 4 copies of Agitation. This is a really good card. It says commit after our Fury attack is blocked, we get to draw a card. That's just an insanely strong exchange rate. Commit a foundation to draw a card is just kind of always really good for the most part. It's just like the card draw is going to help you find your more attacks to kill them, or early game it's going to find the more foundations you need to be building after you're done attacking. And they block us a lot in this deck because we have a lot of really scary attacks when they hit, and we have a lot of really scary damage numbers. They block us quite a lot. So this card's just really like value in our deck. Very important part of our draw engine alongside our All Might face. Next we have 4 copies of Heroic Lineage. This is a really strong card. This is probably one of the best two diff foundations in the game. It has 2 crazy responses. To commit itself, when your rival's attack gets a damage bonus, it gets -3 speed. So it gets -3 speed when they pump their damage, which works, right? Because when they pump their damage, that's when you want to block them. So give them -3 speed. And then, when our attack gets a speed bonus, we can commit for +2 damage. Now that happens a little less. We have like a reasonable amount of ways to give speed bonuses. Long lasting will make it come in with speed. Corrosion Lunge can give the next one speed when it comes in. We do have Evil Gaze to give speed, and then we have a couple of foundations that do it well. So there are ways to get our own speed pump in this deck in case we ever need to commit for more damage, but it's mostly there for the defensive response on our opponent's attacks, as well as just being a low block, which our symbol in our deck are very scarce when it comes to. So very good card there. And then we have 4 copies of Leighton Skill. This guy's got a really nice block zone, and it has a really nice enhance to flip it and discard 2 cards and draw 2 cards. This is just the filtering I was talking about earlier. It's a very strong card. Helps us find our kill turns, helps us find our orange. Just a really good hand fixer. You do draw a lot of cards, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have cards that fix your hand in your deck. And again, it's just got a really nice block zone. Can't go wrong with Leighton Skill. Next, we have 2 copies of Frozen. This card is also another one that took a while to come into the deck. Once I put it in, I was like, wow, this card is freaking awesome. So this card says, enhance your turn only, destroy a foundation to make your rival commit 1 foundation. I just always want to have this card on my board when I'm ready to go in for my kill turn. Destroying my committed foundations that I'm passing my checks on as I play my attacks to make you commit more is insane, especially with stuff like Turn of Dust already has stun 2. Like, it gets really dangerous really quickly, and it's also a great block zone. So I love this card. I wish I could play more, but it would kind of be cluggy it more, and there's not really anything else I'd take out for it. So it's just a fine 2 of. I don't really care about seeing it until I'm pretty much ready to go in for the kill, right? So it's a good card there. Now for the spams, we have 4 copies of Calling for Backup. This card's really good. It's just a flip to draw a card. Then if this wasn't the first played this enhanced step, you have to discard a card. So for the most part, it's the first enhance ever played, you or your opponent. So you don't want to do this on their attacks because you have to discard, but it can be a good filter if you need the emergency filter. But for the most part, we play this on our attacks, so just free card draw, right? It's just a free card draw. Very nice. Then we play 4 copies of Let's Fight Bad Guys. This is just a flip to give a Fury plus 2 speed. It's really good. Almost everything in our deck besides Ice Storm is a Fury. Fury is a very valuable commodity in this deck because we have so much damage pump. So flip for 2 speed is just insane. Next, we kind of have some sus cards, okay? So we have 4 copies of Villainous Entrance. This is a rather sus card. This card says, commit, our Fury attack gains stun 1, which is like fine, and then flip after your rival blocks a foundation, builds a foundation during the combat phase, you can commit it by flipping this card. Playable while committed. So like, there's some niche scenarios where that's relevant. If Kirishima was still like a character, it'd be even more relevant. But in general, the card is relevant enough to be played. It also, we kind of just have to play it because it's a low block. We're kind of just forced to do it because it's a low block, but it does have good interactions, like being able to commit it, gain stun 1, stun 3 in total with Turn to Dust, and then, oh look, we have a committed foundation to blow up for our Turn to Dust, or we have a committed foundation to blow up for our Frozen, so it's really, you're committing 2. It's not bad, right? It has some decent interactions in the deck, and again, like, commit for stun 1 is speed, right? Like, stun is essentially speed, so that is like a valuable commodity for our deck. It's just a 1-for-1, which is only really good when it's good, but when it's good, if that makes sense, right? It is an okay card. Then I guess I'll go ahead and move All Might kind of down here. You can kind of still see his face poking out. I love that. Next, we have 4 copies of Arrogant Disposition. This is basically only in here for the low block and the 6 check, but it does say commit to give a punch -3 speed. So like, man, if you're fighting against a punch deck, you can just give every punch -3 just by committing this. It's not a flip, it's just commit it for -3 speed. That's crazy. And then you have Lineage, which is going to sap like every punch that gets its damage pump, so your Texas Smashes and the whatnot. You have so much speed reduction against the punch deck with this deck. It's kind of insane. But for the most part, we just want to bink the 6 and be able to actually have not awful low blocks in our deck, because as you can see, +3/+3 is not great. This is +1, but I don't want to block with my attacks, right? And then the last card is 4 copies of Keen Observation. This is basically the only 0 we can realistically play that isn't like awful. It says flip when your rival loses health due to an effect, they lose another health. This effect can't kill them, basically. So really the only way we turn that on is Turn to Dust with the lose 2 there, if they lose 2 on one of the options. Other than that, it's just a 0 with a 2 high block, which is insanely valuable. The only other options for 0 under fire is like Endanger and Endanger's just not a great card, and it's got a mid block, which we don't want, and it's got a bad mid block, which we really don't want. And then the other option is Stronger in Darkness, which we don't really use because we never commit our character. Like, we never want to commit our character. He's way super duper important. Like, this whole main deck is very much structured around this character. And that is the entire main deck. As you can see, again, the block zones are not great, which is why we have to kind of 4x these cards. For a while, I was playing like bad cards to facilitate the block zones, but ultimately I realized that I'd rather just 4x both of these and then just play the cards that I want to have a fluid functioning deck. We're also a bit of an aggro deck, so we don't have to worry about our block zones as much as other decks. And we have a lot of health as well, so we can afford to half block a lot of things too. But yeah, so that is our main deck. Now to go into the sideboard is pretty interesting. It's really just a lot of like hate for specific things. We have 2 copies of Plus Ultra in the sideboard. I originally was maining these and just playing a bunch more actions, but I really just wanted to trim the fat of the deck down and just like trim the deck size down in general, and the actions were like a little cloggy sometimes. We usually don't want to use the momentum for the enhance, and like the block effect is nice, but we have 4 in the Typhoons that kind of have that effect on us already, so we ended up not really needing the Plus Ultras very much, but I just have 2 in the sideboard just in case, right? Just to have even more hate for those certain matchups that this card really doesn't like. Next we have the other 2 copies of Ice Storm. This just goes in against any of the big aggro decks for our Breaker 2 to just really mess up their turns. It's a pretty easy card to side in. Then we have 3 copies of Exploding Pride. This card just says that this is a really cool card. It just says they lose a health for each of their momentum, and then if it's blocked, they discard all their momentum. Again, air decks are just like the meta right now, more or less. So being able to punish them for keeping a lot of their momentum, and then just saying like, hey, this is 5 damage in our character. You basically just going to eat 5 unless you want to lose like your jolts and your meteor showers and your ammo for your sound waves, all of that. So it's just a really good card in that sense. It's also a high block, so we get to put more high blocks in our deck when we go against air decks, which is what we want high blocks for, right? So it's really nice in that sense. Then we have the 4th Capture Evildoers. I really just put this again basically against the air decks and then anything else that really want their momentum a lot. Alternatively, if I notice my opponent sees this and starts not taking their momentum, I will like side these out for other things as well. So that's also a very important thing to note when you're sideboarding with this deck, is if they start playing around this card, you can side it out, and then if they notice you side it out, you can even side it back in. Hope they don't notice, and then maybe being able to sneak it back in. It's a very you can do a lot of mind games with that. And then last but not least, we just have 2 copies of Concentrate. This is a really cool card. It says response, remove itself and destroy a foundation. When an ability on an action card is played, cancel it. And then also, if we've taken damage this turn, we can just add it to our momentum as an enhance. So again, it's really good in our character because if we just eat some damage, we can put this in and then draw cards. I used to be main decking this, but again, I just needed to trim the fat, and this card was a little cloggy sometimes in matchups where I actually didn't care about canceling actions. It's nice that it can replace itself occasionally, but for the most part, like, early game is just annoying because you want to be building and attacking, but then you just have all these in your hand. You're like, well, I can draw a bunch of cards on your turn, but it doesn't really matter because I haven't built my stage and stuff like that yet. So it can be a little cloggy in that sense, but when you're against matchups where you want to cancel those actions, if someone's playing Plus Ultra a lot, anything that's playing Evildoers a lot, canceling the form on Evildoers is like it is like actually insane. Same thing if you're fighting like Tokoyami, you get to cancel his Dark Shadows. It's really annoying. So it's just a good card for that sense, but it found its way into the sideboard. And then I also want to talk about some other cards that I thought about main decking for a while. Again, I was playing more long lastings at a point in time, but I kind of explained why that's not at a 4x anymore. Then 2 really important cards that I want to talk about are Fulfilled Duties and Irrefutable Force of Nature. These are kind of more of tech cards, I feel. This says you can destroy it in the enhanced step. This says commit to seal a earth, fire, or water foundation. These are really strong cards, but I feel like they're more like controlled defensive pieces, and they just didn't flow in our deck as well, and I just don't know what to take out for them, right? Like, the solution would be go to a bigger deck size, but then that kind of ruins the dichotomy between like the ratios of my non-spams and spam numbers. And at the same time, I don't want to go to a bigger deck size because I want to see all of these cards in my deck kind of more than I want to see these 2 cards. I could also side them, but I chose not to side them as well because I think everything in the sideboard is a little more important. Like, I just think having all of these cards that are really good against air and then really good against aggro in general are just a little more important than trying to play like these control pieces. These can save your life for sure, and they can help you kill people sometimes too, but I just don't think they do it better than the things currently in the deck. And then the last thing I really want to talk about that this is like the last like big change I made out of like from removing a card completely in the deck is Nervous Habit. This card's really nutty. It's lose a health to gain a speed, which is a crazy good exchange rate in our deck. And if they stun it or just commit it in any way, you can destroy it to make them destroy one. But the +1 speed is just so nice, and this card was in the deck for a long time, and it killed me to take it out. But it's just, I couldn't justify any of these other cards over its place, and it's also like the only real thing I could swap it out for is Agitation, because I cannot take more highs and lows out of this deck and put more mids in. And ultimately, through playing, I felt like I just valued the card draw over the little bit of speed pump that this has, and you kind of just have to deal with not having as much speed pump in the deck, which is unfortunate, but that's just kind of the call that I reach. But I can definitely see you wanting to play Habit over Agitation. I think it's probably a bit more of a player preference thing. And so guys, that is the entire All Might 2 Fire deck. This deck is so much freaking fun to play. The whole mantra of this deck is like, you think about your turn for like 5 minutes, and then they have to think about your turn for like 10 minutes with all of the ultimatums that you put them in, and it's really cool. It's really cool dumping these big damage moves, telling your opponent figure out what you should and shouldn't block based on what I could or could not have. It is just an absolute blast to play. There are so many cool interactions. The way All Might interacts with all of these attacks is so cool, and it's really the main reason why I wanted to play this deck in the first place. And I can't wait to play this deck and upgrade this deck going into set 2. I have so many plans going into set 2, and I can't wait to show you guys on the next iteration of this deck profile. But for now, this is what I have for you guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'm going to see y'all in the next one. Bye-bye.